I remember him looking at me dead in the face and saying to me, "You do not owe anybody an explanation." And that was so important for me to hear right then.
Hello, and welcome to Returning Stronger Stories. Tonight, we have a special guest with us, Juliet. Thank you, Juliet, for being
Hi, thanks
here.
for having me.
Awesome. So glad to have you. So I wanted to start tonight by just kind of giving you a few minutes to tell us a little bit about your story, your mission experience, where you were, and kind of what necessitated you returning early.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Juliet Miller. I'm from California. I actually am a convert to the church. I joined when I was 16. And as soon as from my very first missionary discussion, I was super excited at the idea of going on a mission. I wanted to do it so bad. I thought it was so cool. I would go out and teach lessons like with the missionaries all the time. I had a few different like teaching callings in my ward, just like super excited to get out on a mission. I um, left on my mission in 2008. And so that was back before the age change. So I was 21 when I left. And I turned 21 in October of 2008. And I forget what day I got my mission call, but it was really close to Halloween, I think. It was like very like I turned 21, my papers were in, I got my call, and then I was set to leave. And then I left, I entered the MTC on New Year's Eve of 2008. I was called to the Missouri Independence Mission. At the time, the Missouri Independence Mission had about 50 sisters. 40 of them were called to be visitor center sisters at the church
Mhm.
history sites there in Independence. And then there was about 10 of us who were called to be full pros sisters, as they called us. And so I was called to be fully proselyting on my
Mhm.
mission. So I went to the Provo MTC, spoke English, um, went out to my mission in Missouri. The mission itself, very large. At least at the time, it's gotten a little bit smaller. They've split a few times. Like now there's like a Wichita mission that's kind of like taken some of the geography of the mission. But at least at the time when I was there 15 years ago, very, very big mission. I was assigned to an area called Hays, Kansas, um, which is basically right smack dab in the middle of America. Like if you looked at a picture of the United States and put your finger as close to the middle as possible, you would end up on Hays, Kansas. My area was about 500 square miles between my companion and I. It was about 100 miles east to west and 50 miles north to south. We probably covered at least like 8 or 9 very small towns. Hayes was the biggest town. There's a university there, but still, it's not like a big university. And then a lot of small towns that were like, had one stop sign and no stoplights.
Mhm.
So that's kind of where my mission begins. I had good companions. I know that not everybody does. I did. They were no complaints there. The members in the area, no complaints there. Everyone treated me well. My mission leaders, as far as like my district leaders, my zone leaders, that kind of thing, were pretty good. There are a few that were not, but I would say overwhelmingly positive experience there as well. Um, and I just really struggled with my mental health, which was not new going out on my mission. I was medicated already as I left for
Mhm.
my mission, and continued to be on those medications. But just really struggled with depression, really struggled with like pretty significant like suicidal ideation.
Wow.
Um, just a lot of very intrusive thoughts. Um, and I was a rule keeper. I kept all of the rules. I feel like I worked pretty hard as a missionary. I liked teaching a lot. I liked missionary work before I even was actually a missionary, and also liked it as a missionary, but really struggled a lot with my feelings of self-worth, with my self-concept. The feeling I had, it's like even though I was like keeping all the rules, well, I shouldn't put it in quotes, I was keeping all the rules, but even though I was keeping all the rules, I had a feeling, a deep feeling of like not being good enough, of not being important to God, of not being important to the people around me. Um, and yeah, like I said, a lot of really severe, intrusive, really kind of scary thoughts. Um, I confided in a sister leader about those thoughts, and the way I understand it is that she told the mission president about them. And then I got a call from the mission president that said to come to his office, and which was like a 4 or 5 hour drive away. It was not close. And
Mm.
so we went the next day. We got a special exception to use all the miles to drive to Independence. Um, so we drove, my companion and I, and then the sister leader and her companion all drove to Independence. And I sat down across his desk from him and he handed me my ticket home. And
Wow.
that's how I ended up coming home.
So he didn't even talk to you about it. He just handed you the ticket and you,
Hmm.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I don't remember, like in my weekly emails to him, I don't remember if I disclosed. I'm sure I did not disclose like the full extent of what I was experiencing. But I don't remember if I disclosed any of it at all, right? Um, and so yeah, I don't know how much he had assumed or how much he knew up until that point, because like I said, frankly, at this point, I don't really remember, but I know that I didn't disclose everything to him. And I also know that we didn't have what felt like meaningful conversations to me about what would be helpful and like the best way to proceed.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate. I mean, I'm sure he was scared hearing that and a little overwhelmed and probably didn't know
Hmm.
how to handle it, but it would have been helpful probably to be able to have a little more conversation about that.
I was just gonna say, I've thought about that a lot about the way that decision was handled. And I do think the right thing happened for sure. And so I've never faulted him too much for it. And I also, I think I take thoughts or feelings of suicide very, very seriously. I think they should always be taken very seriously. And I don't think that me, a young missionary away from most of their resources out in the mission field is optimizing like the resources that a young person needs, right? And so
Hmm.
I definitely um recognize like the responsibility that I think he felt to send me home. And I think that it was prudent for sure, like I really appreciate that. Um, but one thing that I did struggle with is like, especially once I came home, I heard all kinds of stories about things that people did on their mission and were like allowed to stay, right? Like things that were very much against the rules. And it was difficult for me to reconcile, like, oh man, like they did all of that and they were allowed to stay, or they did all of that and someone thought to have a conversation with them.
Mm.
Whereas with me, it was
Yeah,
just
it doesn't
a ticket
necessarily
handed to
help the
me.
situation because it makes you feel like you're defective or did something wrong instead
Yeah,
of,
like I didn't even, yeah, like I didn't get a chance. And also, like, I wasn't really offered much like meaningful support, which I don't think that's the right place to handle that kind of mental health situation. I do think people should be home with as many supports as possible.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, multiple things can be true at once.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I appreciate you sharing that and being vulnerable because those are big feelings. And I think sometimes people feel those and maybe you're afraid to admit it. And so
Yeah.
just sharing one of the things, the reasons we're doing these stories is to have people realize they're not alone and they're not the only ones experiencing those kind of things. And so I appreciate that
Yeah, it's my
from you.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in the course of your mission and your time there, or in the process of coming home, do you feel like you had any kind of meaningful experience that you'd want to share with us that and our audience?
Yeah, man, I had a lot of meaningful experiences, especially with just the way people treated me upon arriving home. I think one that has really, really stuck with me is that so the mission president handed me my ticket. It was for the next morning that I got on an airplane. So I get on the airplane, I come home. Most people get like welcoming parties in the airport when they come home. I didn't. It was just my dad picking me up from the airport on his way home from work. And then he drove by the stake, like the stake president's office after picking me up from the airport so that I could be released from my calling. And we met with, I forget if he was either first or second counselor in the stake presidency. I don't remember. One of the counselors in the stake presidency was the one to release me. And we were sitting, in his office, and I don't remember any of what he said, except that I remember him looking at me dead in the face and saying to me, "You do not owe anybody an explanation." And that was so important for me to hear right then, and so important for me to um, remember. And honestly, I've like applied it to a lot of things in my life. And it's something that I tell other people a lot too, because I think that when our community, we've like left on a mission and there's an expectation and we feel accountable to God, to our ward, to our family, to our community, that we are going to like live up to this expectation that either that we perceive people really have of us, right? Like whether or
Hmm.
not they do. Um, and so when we don't meet what we perceive as the expectation that people have, it's normal to feel like we owe people an explanation.
Yeah,
And I don't think we do. But I think I needed him to tell me that I didn't owe anybody an explanation. And the way he said anybody was very important.
yeah. It's like he gave you that permission, so you had that space to feel like, you know what, I can be okay with this, and I can set that boundary. That's really healthy, and I think that's good for leaders to hear that it
Yeah.
needs to be said, it needs to be named, even if it might be
Mhm.
assumed that somebody's feel understands that they don't,
Yeah.
and your story highlights that. So
Yeah. Yeah. Permission for sure. And I
yes,
think if it's okay if I make a comment on something that I've heard you say before,
yeah,
I saw a video one time of you addressing like what to say when somebody asks like why your child or someone that you know came home, and you
hmm,
said you can almost say, or maybe always say like that they came home for their health, right? Like for health
hmm,
reasons. And I do think that that's true because if a person is coming home for their well-being, it's for their health. But
yep,
I also think it's completely fine to just say like, um, to just like not disclose a reason,
hmm,
or to just defer to the person, or even just say like, I don't really know. They just decided it was time to come home, or
yep,
like, or to say like, that's what they decided was best for them, and even
yep,
to offer a little bit of support and say, that's what they decided, that's what they thought was best. And I support them. I'm happy I'm so happy to see them. I'm happy to have them home. I'm excited for this next thing that they have coming up or whatever.
exactly. Yeah, ultimately, like you said, you don't owe anybody anything as far as that goes, but it's up to you as to what you want to disclose or not, or how much or how little. But
Yeah. I
oh,
also
go ahead.
think that as somebody who is close to a person who has come home, like you are in such a powerful position to kind of like set the stage of expectation, because people who are a little bit further removed from the situation are going to look to you
Hmm.
um, for an understanding of how they should be conceptualizing what has happened. So they're going to be looking for the people who are close to the situation, so the returnee and their close family, close friends, to get a sense of like, was there some foul play going on here? Foul play, like, is this
Hmm.
a sinful thing? Is this shame? Like, is this person going to leave the church, or is this a health thing? Is everybody doing well? Like, is everybody coping well with this? People are going to be looking to that core group of people to understand what is going on, kind of in a general sense, and how they
Hmm.
should be interacting with the situation. And as somebody who is in that close core, who is not the person who has come home, you're able to have the influence without the vulnerability that person
Yeah.
has, the person
Yeah.
that
And I
came home
think
early.
regardless of the reason that somebody comes home, whether it's one of those things or another, the response should be the same, which is love and acceptance and trying to model what the Savior would do
Yeah.
with that
Yeah.
person. So, yeah. Well, you kind of touched on it already a little bit, but what helped you? Do you feel like the most in returning home, and helped you kind of get through that
Yeah.
initial phase?
I think one thing that helped me a lot was just people treating me with as much normalcy
Mm,
as possible. Like, certainly, like, not talking about my early return in a bad way, but also like not trying to overcompensate too much.
mm, mm-hmm,
Um, I Shortly after returning home, I moved back up to where I was going to school, to the ward that I had been in for a few years while I was in school. And I really soon after I moved into that ward, like a week or two, I was called into the Relief Society presidency. And I think that was just another thing that was like affirming to me that people loved me, that they trusted me, that they weren't assuming anything bad about me, that I was wanted, um, that people had confidence in me, that I was willing to serve and that I was prepared to serve. I think like friends just treating me the way that they had always treated me, and also people just being genuinely excited to see me, you
mm.
know, like genuinely happy that I was in their life again in the flesh. Um, yeah, just made me feel wanted and important and like things were okay.
That's so important. That validation and affirmation of just like we still love you and you still matter. It's not
Yeah.
not not based on some kind of what you've done or accomplished, and it's just you as a person. So that's cool that you had that.
Yeah, and the way it felt was that nothing, or that very, very little had changed, you know?
Mm,
Like we were just back to what we were doing before I left. And I also think it's kind of interesting how, especially in the case of women for whom, there's not the same kind of like expectation or responsibility to serve a mission, that
mhm.
it's like if you don't go on a mission at all, that's completely fine, right? Like there's no shame or judgment there. But if you go and serve a mission for um, 15 months instead of 18 months, or a year instead of 18 months, or like me, you go for 5 months instead of 18 months, it's like you're more at risk of like judgment and shame, I guess, than you are if you hadn't gone at all, which I
Yeah.
think is just kind of like a funny,
It,
sort of
it
a
is an
funny
interesting
dynamic.
dynamic. We've kind of discussed this before. It's like in some Christian religions, you could go out for what would be considered a mission for 1 week or 2 weeks, and you'd be celebrated like some kind of hero.
Yeah.
And you go and do 5 months, which is a lot. It's a big sacrifice, and because it's not that timeline, it's seen in a different sense instead of celebrating the sacrifice that you did make, which was significant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So. Well, you had touched on this also a little bit, but was there anything that you felt like didn't help or you wish had been different looking back on it?
Yeah. Um, Definitely, like, I think I wish there would have been more, with my mission president, I wish that I think it would have been more ideal if that had been handled a little bit differently. Although I do offer him a lot of grace and realize that, especially when you're managing that many missionaries, and probably a lot of those missionaries had a lot of like mental health struggles. And there's just a lot of variables that it's difficult to kind of get it exactly right every single time, especially with something where there's like so much vulnerability. One thing that happened to me that was kind of hard for me is like a few years after I had returned home, I had a friend. This is like a very, very small thing. Um, but I had a friend, and we had been a friend for we had known each other and were pretty close and had been friends for maybe like a year or two. And he like had known that I had served a mission. Um, but like at one time it came up that I had returned early, that I had only been out for 5 months. And he kind of acted a little bit like I had lied to him or that I had like betrayed him.
Lied
Bec-
about serving a mission or
yeah,
something? Yeah.
yeah. Because like in I think because when I had mentioned having served a mission, he pictured that I had gone out for 18 months, right? Like that's our expectation. And so then, when he found out that I had only served for 5, like what the reality was is different than what he had assumed, right?
Hmm.
Which it was a normal assumption, right? Like I don't fault him at all for making that assumption. Um, but he kind of acted as if I should have at some point like told him that it had only lasted 5 months. And it's not that I was keeping it from him. It's something that came up all the time. And obviously, everyone that I knew at that time was well aware that it was 5 months. Nothing about it was a secret. It's just that, like, it's not like it's not like every time you bring up your mission, you're supposed to say, like, oh, just so you know, I only served for 5 months.
Yeah.
Right. And there just had never been a time that it had felt relevant. And honestly, like at that point, I had been home for a few years. And so it's not like my mission was something I was talking about very often anyway. Um, and so like that was like a little difficult for me, just feeling, yeah, I think that makes sense why
Yeah.
that would have
Oh,
felt difficult.
absolutely. And I
Yeah.
love Elder Holland's advice on this. We've kind of highlighted on our channel where he said, if you had to come home, you served a mission. You're a return missionary, full stop. You don't need to add in that, explanation
Yeah.
because you served and you gave it your all. And that's all that needs to be said, period. And I
Yeah.
love that. So,
Yeah. And the truth is there's a lot of variance from
hmm.
There's so many variants from mission to mission, right? Like some people
Hmm.
baptize 100 people, some people baptize 0, right?
Hmm.
Like some people have a really positive experience, some people have a really negative experience. Some people are in 40 degrees, some people are in 120 degrees. Like there is just so much variance from mission to mission. Um, and the time variance that happens is one that's just really obvious that people can see. It's a variance that like
Hmm.
people are able to observe easily and so therefore are able to form opinions on, I guess. But
Yeah.
like there's such a range of different mission experiences. And it's not like one specific mission is what counts as a mission with a capital M and every other mission falls short of that.
It's a really good point. I mean, we don't dissect like we do the timeline or the length of time like this, like we would with baptisms, for example. You don't have people like, oh, you only baptized this many, your mission was therefore not as valid or legit. So
Yeah.
that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Um, well, so what kind of advice would you give to somebody who may be watching this and is an early return missionary themselves and going through some of those same similar feelings of maybe even depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, or whatever, and
Yeah.
watching this.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say get as much help as you need with your mental health. So, therapy, meds, support from family and friends, whatever you can do. It's all worth it. If your therapist isn't working, get a new therapist. If the meds aren't working, get new meds. Do whatever you have to there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Ask for as much help as you think you need. Um, and I would say on top of that, just know that at least from my perspective, you have nothing to be ashamed of. Truly. Like I believe that so deeply and so honestly. I don't view my own short mission like as a deficit in myself. I don't view short missions as deficits in other people. I think when we use the term like early return, um, but it's like early according to what? Like early according to what we expected, and maybe early according to what we expected, early according to what other people expected. But is it early according to what God expected, or is it early according to what we needed, what was good for us,
Yeah.
And or is it early according to what the people around us needed, right? Like there's work to be
Yeah.
done wherever we go. And one thing that I really felt like as I was driving from the area where I was serving to the mission home, and I like wasn't exactly sure what was going to happen. I just really felt like God had heard my prayers, and I really just felt like God was helping me, and I felt like the next thing that was going to happen was going to be the right thing that was going to happen. And I want like 100% me coming home was the right thing. And actually, my mental health like got way better basically immediately when I came home. And I feel like it's a little like I don't know, a little edgy to say like I just wasn't like it just wasn't right for me. Like it just was
Mm-hmm.
not where God wanted me. But I just felt so much better when I wasn't a missionary even anymore. And that's even with having like a pretty like I said, like a pretty positive mission experience. Nothing terrible happened to me. Nothing traumatic happened to me. People treated me like pretty well out there. Like I can't point to a single thing like, oh, like this is the reason my mission was so hard. It just it just was not this situation where I was going to be thriving. I just didn't
Yeah.
thrive there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that because I think that's so poignant because, if we believe in a God who knows all things, he wasn't surprised when that
Yeah.
happened. It was part of the plan. He knew it was the plan. He knew that that's the direction that things were going to go and that that's okay that that happened. So it's not a ruining of it or, getting off the path somehow. So
Yeah.
I think that's really good. And I loved what you had to say about the early return label too. I don't love that label. We use it because it
It's
is the label
practical.
that people know and understand as to what it means, but I don't love the connotation behind it. And I wish I could come up with a different terminology
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
it.
I
But
know.
but
Yeah. I
well,
get
well, thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you've shared tonight, and being vulnerable and sharing your story. Like I'd mentioned earlier, I just think there's a real power in sharing these things because it allows people to hear that what they're going through, what they're experiencing, they're not alone in that, that there are other people who have walked that same path, had those same feelings, and that there is a way through and out the other side, which is so
Absolutely.
important.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah. It's my pleasure.